Alright, call this meeting to order. Mayor Jim Johnson, would you lead us in prayer this morning?
Let's stand, please. Lord, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this blessed day, Lord. Thank you for your daily blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day, dear God. Watch over each one that's here today. Help us do the business that needs to be done, dear God. We ask all these favors in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.
Alright, join me in the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Sherry, will you do the roll call?
Greg Mitchell, Andy Duggan, Dale Raven,
Here.
Bruce Collins, Alan Foster,
Here.
R.J. Crawford, Matt Adcock,
Here.
Josh Miller,
Here.
Jimmy Johnson,
Here.
Marcus Stowers, Randy Petty, Lloyd Williams,
Here.
Steve Jones, Terry Wilmore, Stephen Barlow,
Here.
Curtis Hayes, Stephen Bilbrey, Sam Gibson,
Here.
Randy Porter, Lauren Queen, Jeff Mason,
Here.
Stephen Babcock, David Sullivan,
Here.
Alyssa Farmer, Terry Bell,
Here.
Ryan Chastain, Marvin Lutz, Kenny Robinson, Jerry Lowry,
Here.
Representative Cameron Sexton, and Senator Paul Knight.
Thank you. All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion over here, second. Waiting. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item up is our development district financial report. Ms. Ginger.
This financial report is due the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th. We are still receiving some of our expenditures and accounts payable. So these, some of these numbers are estimates based on our receivables. So this number could fluctuate as we continue to close out our books. But we had total revenues of $8,356,379. Total expenditures of $8,858,938. So we had a program match of a little over $502,000. We have matching revenues of $558,732, and we have non-grant related expenditures of $55,793, which leaves us $379 of revenue over expenditures. And just keeping in mind, like, we don't typically add a huge amount to our fund balance every year because we're designed not to really accumulate a large fund balance, but to use it towards services. Anybody have any questions?
Motion to approve. Motion to approve, Bill Reagan. Second, Mayor Barlow. I have a motion and a second to approve the financial report. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good, thank you, Ms. Ginger. All right, next is number 5, our UCDD loan. Ms. Minnie Scramble, I think she's gonna come up and talk to us today about that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we've been working toward reporting our loans to the credit bureaus. We're in partnership with the Credit Bureaus Alliance. They are a nonprofit that acts as a liaison between us and the credit bureaus. Through our training with them, they have guided us on staying compliant with the Credit Reporting Act. And one of the things we need to do is come up with our own credit policy and have that in place. So with their guidance, we crafted those policies and reminders for you to review and approve. If you have any questions as you look through it, it should be on the first part of the tab under CIC.
We have a policy before us. I will take a motion to approve that policy.
Make a motion.
Motion, Mayor Hancock.
Second.
Second, over here. And you, Greg Mitchell, second, Greg Mitchell. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussions on this policy? Any roll call, please?
No,
All right, seeing no more questions or discussions, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That policy is Next, this is delinquent loans.
So in preparation for this credit report to go live, we have been working with some of our past due clients. Several of them we work with either to get a plan to get caught up, or once the credit reporting starts, we feel they'll be contacting us to work on a plan to get caught up. While doing that, we reevaluated several seriously delinquent loans, and we have 4 today to go over that we would like to discuss and pick an action on. The first one is loan 230101. This loan board approved previously using Fox Collection Agency, and through Fox we collected the majority of the outstanding balance. To avoid any additional legal costs legal action would incur, we're recommending writing off the remaining balance, which is about $9,700. The original loan amount was over $134,000. Loan number 2 is loan number 1650101. We repossessed and auctioned off the collateral that we had on this one. We got just under $7,000, which has been applied to the loan. We have been unsuccessful in our attempts to collect the monthly payment on the remaining balance, but due to the fact that we've already repossessed the collateral, we're recommending writing off that remaining balance as well. Loans number 410101 and 140101 it was one loan request split into 2 loans. The original owners of the business sold the business to their son, who has since sold again. We've exhausted our collateral options and are recommending writing off the remaining balances on each of the loans. We did collect total $75,883 in interest on this. And then the final one, 1580101, was one of our disaster loans. The borrower has not made any payments since funding and has not responded to any attempts to contact him. Based on information we have, he has moved out of state. We had previously provided some information to our attorney to pursue him and are requesting further legal recourse and beginning of anything he wants to offer on this one.
We've already sued him, and we've gotten a judgment against him for some $27,000, which is more than the original loan amount. He never made a single payment on the disaster loan, so this is probably the most sinister of the delinquencies that you have. I've investigated. He doesn't have any assets to go collect. He doesn't own any property. The vehicles that he has are financed with Cash Express. There's just no money to go get from this man. He's spent it and gone. We've looked, and he appears to now be living in a place called Dawsonville, Georgia. So he's outside the state of Tennessee, which limits our ability to go collect against him further. The only other option that we might have is, because he never made any payment, it's clear that he never intended to repay this loan. He took it probably under fraudulent pretenses. We might be able to ask the DA if they'd be willing to prosecute him for taking a loan under those fraudulent pretenses. Again, he's out of state, so if they were to charge him, there'd be some outstanding warrant in case they ever picked him up back in the state of Tennessee. But that's about the last straw that we have with him. But it appears that this balance is going to be uncollectible regardless. It's just a question of what to do about this individual who took advantage of a disaster loan.
Need to pursue the action.
What's the will of the board is to write these off or proceed with the project? Whichever the board wants to do as far as that.
I think what we're asking for is those first 3 that she mentioned, that we would write those off, and we would like to continue pursuing legal just because we think it was fraudulent in nature. So we'd like to consider, continue seeking like a legal recourse or whatever possible we can get against this individual.
The judgment that we have will last for 10 years, and it can be renewed for an additional 10. So we'll look at him from time to time, and if we ever find that he's got any assets, we'll try to go seize him.
Motion to approve, Mr. President.
So that would be writing off the top 3 and continue to pursue. I have a motion to group these and forgive the first 3 and continue with legal on the 4th. Do I have a second? Second over here. All right. I have a motion. Any questions or discussion on this motion?
We're going to pursue the 4th one.
Correct. You're writing off, you're voting on to write off the first 3 and continue to pursue legal action on the 4th.
On that third loan, I've got a question on that. That's a significant amount of money on that.
even though it has sold, are they not responsible to pay off that loan at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, our perspective is there's really no more collateral that's left out there to go after. And, if you go back, and as she mentioned, the interest we received, through the interest that we've gotten, we've recovered all of our principal amount and still made money off this loan. I just don't know that legal, or from an economic standpoint, it would do much good if we pursue it. And it's a rather, I think it's the oldest of all of them, maybe 2011, something like that, so it's been around for some time.
So the fraud, the fraud, charge is going to switch it from civil to a criminal?
If the DA would want to pursue that, that would be.
Yeah, it's up to them as to whether they do that, and of course, that evidence standard is high to prove that somebody intended to take a loan without the intent to repay it, essentially theft, and, they have to prove that.
So there's a possibility this one could come back later, fiscal year to be forgiven.
We're just not comfortable letting this guy go.
No.
When we say we're writing off the debt, that just means we're not spending any money for further collection. It doesn't mean they're forgiven. These people owed us the money, and the statute of limitations is still going. If we find out, 2-3 years from now, that somebody's got money that, should have paid and didn't pay, we can always reopen it and go collect it at that time until the statute.
Or way to garnish any kind of payment or anything like that?
To garnish somebody's pay, you have to get a judgment against them. So we've done that with this Mr. Woodward, with the, honorable transport. Unfortunately, we don't know that he's got a job, and it's hard, we've got a state of Tennessee judgment, he's out of state, it's very hard to garnish out of state. If he were still in the state, that'd be a better option for him. The other folks, we'd have to sue them and get a judgment against them if we wanted to try to garnish something. We've looked at all of these over time, Megan and Jesse, before he, moved on. If we don't think there are any other assets to collect, or we would have already collected.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, and then we will roll call this, Ms. Shee.
Craig Mitchell,
Yes.
Dale Raven.
Yes.
Alan Foster.
Yes.
Matt Adcock.
Yes.
Josh Miller.
Yes.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yes.
Lloyd Williams.
Yes.
Stephen Barlow.
Yes.
Stephen Bilbrey.
Yes.
Sam Gibson.
Yes.
Lauren Wheaton.
Yes.
Jeff Mason.
Yes.
David Sullivan.
Yes.
Elisa Farmer.
Yes.
Terry Bales.
Yes.
Jerry Loud.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to action items. You have a list of action items. Which part would you like to speak to those?
The first four are simply policies and procedures that we have to update from time to time to submit those to our funding agencies. So those are just standard that we operate under all the time. They just have been looked at, reviewed, maybe a few tweaks put in them. But for the most part, you just have to put them in the record that we're operating under those. So those first four things. And I think you've got like 3 tabs that sort of separates those. One other thing that we have included, I think behind the second tab, when we went through the sunset audit procedure back for UCHRA a couple of years ago, where the state comptroller's office comes in and looks at us, one of the things they recommended is that we bring to the board any complaints that come up. And, we do a fairly good job, and we do get a few calls from time to time, but nobody that really wants to make an official complaint. But we do have a couple from time to time that make official complaints. That is the second tab there where we call complaint intake forms. So you can see what individuals have called, what they've complained about. And I think in most of these, we've put a little explanation of what we've done to remedy that. But that is a accountability measure the comptroller's office thought would be a good measure to put in place. So we're doing it for both the development districts and the human resource agency. So we'll do this again for the human resource agencies in just a little bit. So those are there. The third tab, I think, is our statutory bonds for Ginger and myself, similar to what you have to have in your county operations. That is all the things in the document here, or in your tab right there for action items. I do have one other thing that we'll talk about in just a second.
All right, and the statutory bonds, and that be approve the fees?
We want to get it.
So you have a list of action items before you, I would have a motion to approve them as all together.
So moved.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Second.
Second, Ms. Wheaton. All right, we have a motion and a second to group and to approve all action items. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? There you are. Thank you.
So last thing I want to bring up, and it may be that something we need to act on, it may not be. For those, for county governments, we did notice that the County Government Association, their conference starts at the same time or the day that our next meeting is, but it starts in the afternoon. Didn't know if that's, you wanted to talk about moving the meeting or not. I think, based on what our agenda usually is, you probably can get through our meeting and get, I think, to Chattanooga, if you elected to do that. Didn't know if that would be an issue, but I think the only thing they have is the actual board meeting in the mid-afternoon.
That would be Alan.
What's the date on that one?
The 16th of or 18th of October. That's the opening day of that conference. Just didn't want to have a conflict where we run into a problem before, if that got to be an issue.
Then we'll move the date, could be move it up to say 9 o'clock. Start the meeting at 9.
That's the governor's conference.
Do what?
Is that the governor's
No, it's
conference?
TCSA.
That's it, yeah, I can see you, that's the governor's conference, that's in September, right? Yeah, September 18th, the governor.
So this is the TCSA?
Yeah, it's TCSA.
Okay.
Their fall convention. trade show.
I mean,
I know we move
I
it to
suggest we move it myself.
9 o'clock works better, start at 9 and probably be done by 2 Yes, sir.
Oh, October?
October.
I'm sorry, I'm in September.
Yeah, TCSA, yeah, it's on Wednesday the 18th.
That early one would be fine.
Just probably all of us will go down and let me, that's probably right here.
You look at 9 a.m., our meeting here at 9 a.m.
I take a motion to move our meeting to 9 a.m. that morning. Judy makes that motion. Have a second?
What are we doing now? So
Changing, instead of 10 o'clock on that morning, we will start at 9, and that way we're really late here.
Next week, Wednesday.
Second. All right, have a motion and a second to move the meeting time to 9 o'clock. Any other questions or discussions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? All right, there you go. Number 7 is our program updates from Church Party.
Okay, Rosa Smith, where is Rosa at? All right, you know, we just concluded our summer strategy session. There's been one topic that has come up everywhere we've gone. It has been childcare. Have you heard childcare mentioned any time lately? Over and over and over again. Rosa is funded, her position is funded through our Empower Upper Cumberland program, and one of the things that we've been charged with doing is trying to see what barriers exist and how to eliminate those barriers. And you know, we hear that problem, childcare. Why is it a problem? Now, Rosa has spent the last 8 months digging into and developing a list of what's going on, why childcare has got to be such a critical issue. And we've actually put together some recommendations. And we've been working on this presentation. She made it to our policy council a couple of weeks ago. We've asked her to do it again today. We're trying to put together a proposal that we can take up to change because it needs to go on up to the legislative level and to the State Department level. So we're trying to craft that message and make sure we have everything in it we need to have in it. But you need to know it as well, because this is one of those problems, and Rose is going to get into the details. It's a bureaucratic nightmare that has caused the child care issues that we're dealing with today. And And now, there's other issues involved as well. There needs to be more revenue coming into the program. But there's a lot of disconnect between state departments that are really causing a strain on individuals wanting to start childcare. And I'm gonna throw one number out that I don't think she has in her presentation. But of everybody that starts that licensure process to open a licensed daycare, only 5% are concluding that process. So 95% of the people attempting to open a daycare are stopping because they get frustrated and they run up against so many walls, and they're just seeing it as impossible to do. So with that, we've asked Rosie to come and do this presentation. So this hopefully will enlighten you a little bit about what she has found over the last 8 months.
Thank you, Mr. Farley. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all about the child care project that I've been working on over the last 8 months. As Mr. Farley said, I'm Rosa Smith, and I was hired into the entire program to try to provide solutions to barriers to families to get them back into the workforce. The number one issue was childcare. We've all heard it. It's definitely an issue. We titled our presentation today a Passion Project. While working with the providers over the 14 counties, I come to realize two things. These providers are not doing this to make money, and they're not doing it to get rich. They're doing this to make sure that working parents have a safe place for their children to go during the day. That's the reason we titled this Passion Project. Just to touch a little bit on the Passion Project, I have a quote from one of our providers. She states, I've owned and operated a child care in rural Tennessee for 43 years to help families in the community, but I would not attempt to open a center in today's environment. Everyone, I'd like to take a second to talk about Miss Becky York. She's an owner and operator of Small World Daycare in Ventures County. Becky arrives each morning at 5 a.m. to prepare for her day. She opens up at 6 a.m. to greet families with a smile. She's there most of the time until after 7 a.m. to make sure she's ready for the next day. She states, I'm an educator, an accountant, a custodian, a nutritionist, a nurse, and a social worker. I love children. My heart is in it. I don't make money, but I make children smile. I can do this because I have family support. I own my own building, and I'm grandfathered in from the current building codes and regulations. I would love to retire one day, but I'm not sure what would happen to our families. Miss York is like many providers over there from Cumberland. She's expressing that child care or the lack of child care is an urgent problem, not only in the Upper Cumberland, but across the state. This morning, I'd like to take just a few minutes to tell you where we are today, help you to understand how we got there, illustrate what the problems are, and touch on some possible solutions. But before I do that, I need to lay out a couple of caveats. We do not know the number of people that keep children fewer than 5 in their homes. We know that working families have friends, relatives, or neighbors that keep those children. But we're not talking about those today. Those are unlicensed facilities. What we're talking about today are those licensed facilities that keep many, many children. Over the last 8 months, talking with the providers, we believe that there's approximately 12,205 slots in the Upper Cumberland. Now, if you go to the Department of Human Services website, you're going to find that number to be much greater. The problem is, providers are licensed for more than they can practically operate. We believe the true number is 12,205 slots. I think it's important when you look at these licensed slots, we must understand we're looking at two different things. The majority of them are what we call early education child care. Those are those pre-K programs, those Head Start programs. They align with the school schedule. They only take a small age group, and it's not practical for working families. An example, just over the last 2 months, these daycare slots sat empty because they were closed for the summer. Working moms and dads cannot live by pre-K and Head Start programs alone. True workforce child care are those licensed facilities that operate 52 weeks out of the year. More importantly, they take birth to 5 years.
When looking over the region, we believe there's around 3,870 slots in the Upper Cumberland. In order to get to the 62% of workforce participation rate, which that's what we want to do, we want to bring people back into the workforce. But to get to that, we need an additional 7,000 more slots in the Upper Cumberland. That's almost double to what we have today. So what's the problem? It's a low margin business model. No one's going to get rich off of doing this. The amount of children that they can watch and that allow them to earn, they will not make a large amount of money. To add on top of that, it's highly regulated. There's high startup costs. We're sitting in a recession with a very strict staffing process. While putting all of these burdens on our providers, you know what we're asking them to do? Do more, do better, and do it cheaper. So how did we get here? When looking over the last 8 months, we have identified 2 major impacts in the number of children's slots, not just in the Upper Cumberland, but across the state. The first one is building codes. It was a great idea and it was certainly needed, but what has happened, the implementation of building codes increased the startup and the operation cost of child cares. It was an unintended consequence of a good action. It was definitely needed. Regulations. I'm gonna be honest, I'm a mom. I'm all about health and safety. When my child has to go to daycare, I'm all about health and safety. However, at any time that we hear of an injury or there's a fatality, what's happened, we've added another regulation, on top of a regulation, on top of a regulation, that it's over time, it's almost made it impossible for providers to be successful. So who's all involved? These are just a few illustrations of what we're seeing over the agencies. The Department of Human Services has a 15-step process that includes 90 pages of rules and regulations. They also state to you it can take a year to a year and a half to open your practice. State Fire Marshal. If you were to tell them that you're going to keep 24 or more children, they're automatically going to tell you you're going to have to hire an architect to design, to plan, and stamp your building. On top of that, you're going to need a fire sprinkler system, and on top of that, you're going to need a voice-activated system. If you get all 3 of those, the estimated cost could be over $100,000 just for those 3 items. The Department of Health. Anytime we're providing care for children, we're going to need to feed children. They have their own rules, regulations, and checklists that can be over 10 pages long. That they're going to go through and look at the playground area. They're going to look at your fencing. They're going to look at your ceiling. They're going to look at your walls. They're going to look at your kitchen. And continue to add on to those startup costs.
Rose, I'm on interrupt you just a second. We had one little aha moment, but not a good aha moment yesterday. And we're going to tell on herself, because she's going through talking about all these programs. One of the things we do under UCHRA is we operate the child nutrition program, where we supplement and help daycares feed the children that's in there. In going through this program, we're realizing we're looking at our own rules and regulations, and we're part of the problem. We're part of that problem. But we're running the program, and we've had providers telling Rosa, we don't want to do their program anymore because it's too daggone hard. It doesn't make sense. It makes it so hard that we're actually losing money. So I'm going to confess right there at UCHRA for a second. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, you're good. So we're going to fix that. So, Department of Health. And then local planning and zoning. And we all know who the problem is. Actually, all seriousness. But it does. You've got to keep in mind it impacts the starting and operating of the Upper Cumberland. It's not just one person's fault. It's all of our fault. It's our responsibility to fix this problem. But keep in mind, The provider is left to navigate these state partners and these local agencies alone. They have to do it by themselves in order to get their building up and working. Solutions. First and foremost, we must make childcare more profitable. Last week, I had the honor to meet with a childcare provider. Previously, she was a childcare provider, owner and operator. She was sitting across from me with tears in her eyes, and she said, Rosa, I had to close my doors. I wanted to operate a childcare, but it's not profitable. She said, after all of my expenses, I made $20,000, and I'm a single mom, and I have 3 children. She said, I could not do it. And she said, I would love to do it, but there's no money in it. The risk outweighed the reward to start a new facility today. More people would be interested if it's profitable. We must speed up the time frame. 1 to 1.5 years is not reasonable. If you were to go to a bank to borrow money to buy a building, would they allow you to sit on the sidelines and wait for 1.5 years to make revenue to pay the payment? I don't think they would loan the money. We must reduce the overhead and startup costs. DHS, 90 pages of rules and regulations. Let's go back to Miss Becky York. She has got a building on the square in Beatrice County that is sitting empty. And she said, Rosa, there is no way that I can open up a second location with the rules and regulations and startup costs today. Department of Health, more regulations. Fire suppression system. We've got to make it cheaper or figure out a way to help offset these costs. We have a local provider that opened a childcare in a classroom of a previous elementary school. She had to hire an architect to design, plan, and stamp, install a fire sprinkler system, and a voice-activated system for a daycare. It was okay for our kindergarten students, but it wasn't okay for her childcare. The last thing is new business models. The traditional daycare, as we've always known it, may not be the solution today. We've got to look into the future. We need large capacity. That's going to be our solution. Childcare is a passion project, but it's a solvable problem. It can be fixed. If we can get various state agencies and local partners to work together and to streamline and lower this cost, we could have more childcare. People want to open daycares. We have made it too hard for them to do that. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you. Good job. You know, the million-dollar question is how do we get the state to start seeing it? So fortunately, we and Mayor Foster had the opportunity to be in that meeting. We had an informal meeting with Speaker Sexton, and hopefully we're going to take this up. We've got other legislators that are interested in hearing this story, and then hopefully we'll get some movement in the positive direction. But, you know, this is one of those things. I'm going to be honest. Every time Rosa talks, I get my blood boils because this is a solvable problem if we get everybody to sit down and realize that they are part of the problem. We need to do better. So I appreciate you taking an opportunity to letting us do this and get a little prep time before she presents it to other people down the road. So.
Art, you said with UCHRA, our program and stuff, that there's some tweaking, I guess, that needs to be done there. Is that something that we're doing?
That's something we're going to have to look at. I'm going to be honest with you. It was one of those things that dawned us. Rose told the story. It was our provider up in Beatrice County that our food program is very structured, and it says for you to get reimbursed, a provider has to do very specific menus. It has to be verified menus that they're providing to the children, and it has to be very specific brands of products that it has to be used. And the one thing they used the illustration of, the provider up in Beatrice County said, I went to the store, they quit carrying the approved milk. And she said, I had kids, I had to have 15 gallons of milk for the kids coming up the next week. So she did what she had to do. She bought those 15 gallons. It was the exact type of milk, but it was a different brand. And we come in and inspected right after that, and what did we find? We found used milk that wasn't an approved brand. So it's one of those things, we've got to step back and look and see, do we have wiggle room? Can we make our program easier to work as well?
But where do you get the information as far as monitoring certain brands? Is that coming from the state?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I can talk, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the Child and Adult Care Food Program when we get to the HRA meeting, because on the other side, we're trying to expand that. We were asked to work with the Putnam County Nutrition System, and so far, I'm up to documentation this high, and I still don't have it approved yet. So I was gonna flip over and talk about some areas.
It's a federal program.
Yes, it
Flows
is.
through the Department of Human Services. So they have regulations as well. And part of, like, going back to the old empower, a lot of these changes can be done at the state level. A lot of these changes have to be pushed up the channel and be done at the federal level as well. You usually have somebody making rules that has never run daycare or ever run government that we have to try and deal with. So I think that's a surprise to anybody in this room.
Any other questions, discussions on that presentation? All right, we'll move on. And I just want it on the record that you said you're a great nightmare, not me this time.
All right. I'm gonna be honest, I've said this, I told Speaker Sexton, we're gonna piss the state off. There's no way. I wasn't supposed to say that. Was I? Yeah, you can. There's no way around it.
And you all put Tommy's picture on there.
And the meanest look Tommy Lee ever made on that picture. Somebody pinching him or something?
That's just starting.
That's it.
You're out of code.
All right, we will move on to item number 8, the executive director report.
Well, following up to that, I do have one grant opportunity I want to pitch out there. Now, it's not ready to be approved, but I want to talk about it a little bit because it is a little unique and it does not cover all 14 counties. The Economic Development Administration has a grant opportunity that's getting ready to roll out. It's called the Recompete Program. And it's a very unique federal grant. They have come out in this grant and said, we realize that there are some distressed and at-risk and some communities that are really struggling, and we need to do something to help. Now, the first thing that comes to mind, I got Doug Young in Clay County wearing me out trying to figure out a way to get Clay County off that distress list. So the first thing we saw that grant, we're sitting there thinking that may be a possibility. But when we got digging into it, we wouldn't do it just for Clay County. We want to do it for all the counties that would qualify. Now, looking at this Recompete grant, it is designed, going back, you notice Rosa mentioned that 62% workforce participation rate. That's the national average. That's where we want to get to. So we want to say your working age population, you need to have at least 60 or more of those people, 60% or more of those people working. You have a viable community. Part of the reason why we have the distress and have the at-risk is because of poverty. It's because we don't have people working that needs to be working. See, just an illustration, I think Van Buren County, I think, is the lowest. Van Buren County is sitting around about 40% of its working age population that's in the workforce. Probably 20% lower than the national average. I think Tennessee's average is around 59%, somewhere in that range. Clay County, you're sitting, I think, at 46%. Now, most others are right around 50%, which is good, but it's still below that national and state average. So we've got to move people back into the workplace. And part of child care is getting people back in the workplace. This opportunity that's coming up, there are 9 of our counties that would qualify. Unfortunately, it's not all 14. And it's easier for me to illustrate the ones that don't qualify because it'll make sense just a little bit. Smith County, Macon County, that touches the Nashville market, wouldn't qualify. Jackson County and Putnam County wouldn't qualify. Overton County doesn't qualify as well. If you think about it, you know, Jackson and Putnam County, they share the same employer base for the most part. They're very connected from a labor shed. Then the other 2 that's touching Nashville, and Overton County is so close and tied into Putnam County as well. Those 5 counties would not qualify. But we do believe that if we structured a program to work on getting that workforce participation rate up to 62%, anything we build in the 9 counties will bleed over and benefit the other communities. So that's a program that we're looking at. I just wanted to put it out there because I want to be honest up front. We usually only tackle stuff that's going to address all 14 counties. We think this will help all 14, but we'll only be allowed to target 9 counties. So there will be a few, like I said, Putnam, Macon, Smith, and Overton, and Jackson, that we wouldn't be specifically dealing with, but you're still going to reap the benefits. Anything we do in those others, those services are going to only assist those communities as well. So I just wanted to get that out there. We're looking at it. We've got meetings scheduled to go through and start developing it. We think it will tie right into the Empower program, use what we've learned in that program as sort of the foundation, and then start saying we're going to try, in essence, childcare is a part of it. We would probably look at actually possibly opening or partnering with somebody to open a childcare facility in those 9, and other things along that line. So it would allow us to tackle some of these things that we're starting to identify through Empower. So no action needs to be taken on that. Just wanted to let you know that it's out there, and some of you will start hearing from us probably shortly. Mr. Chairman, that's all I'll tell you.
All right, at this time, we'll recognize our regional partners. I see Josh from USDA.
Good morning, everyone. Just one brief update from rural development. We are approaching the end of the federal fiscal year. We're about a month and a half away. So we're working right now to finish up this fiscal year's obligations for projects and looking forward to the next fiscal year. So with that being said, if you have any needs in your communities or any projects that you'd like us to consider for potential funding, whether that be through our community programs division or business programs division, please feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to have those discussions on the forefront and see if we can give any assistance to the communities. Thank you.
Robert, TDEC, I see you back there.
Just real quick from TDEC, ARP round 2 closed August 7th, and they're working through 109 applications for about $500,000. One thing is just give them time as they start to work through that, and I'm sure some of the communities in here will be contacted. Other thing is, here to be a resource, so holler if you need anything. Thank you.
Ms. Bonnie, back there. You.
Always busy, I'm sorry, I apologize for having to drop out and take the call. Not only are we busy with passports and cases and everything, Ohio State, I participated in emerging ministries, local nonprofits that help a variety of people with services and help them. And my goal, and I think I accomplished it, was to help them better understand constituent services, plugged in their thing and they're doing. Then last night, I participated at the Cookville Putnam County NAACP meeting because Mike Glass was there, the BSO, and I wanted to support him. And it turned out he kept talking about how helpful our office is to him, and so they made me stand up and be recognized. So that was fun, but we're just busy and we're here.
Yes, good morning, thank you. I just wanted to share some statistics with you to kind of let you know where we are at our office. We are collectively in our offices, we're working 367 cases right now. To give you an idea of the breakdown, because a lot of you may not even know who all we do work with and assist, but we have 7 EBA cases, we have 2 FEMA, 78 Social Security, 34 passport cases, 48 IRS, 54 immigration, 13 Medicare, Medicaid, 5 Office of Personnel Management, 1 FDIC, 1 USDA, 1 HUD, 1 National Archives and Record, 3 Customs and Border Patrol, 3 U.S. Postal Service, a Consumer Financial Protection Agency, 4 of those, 41 miscellaneous that kind of fall within some of these are really are not that identifiable, one of which I did have my first alien abductee inquiry last week. I couldn't decide if that was Department of Defense or Immigration. I'm going to do that with So, again, never a dull moment. So if you have anybody in your constituents that need help with any of these federal agencies, please find your contact. Please call me. Thank
That was nobody in this room, was it?
Any other regional partners that we may have missed? All right, seeing none, is there any old business? Any new business? All right, at this time, is there any public comments? All right, seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, all those in favor?
Aye.